Yang Berhormat Puan Fadlina Sidek, Minister of Education, as well as our moderator, Mr. Malik Ali, Founder and Managing Director, BFM. Mr. Malik, take it away.
Great, thank you very much. So the format is quite, hi, I'm Malik. Thank you very much, thanks very much for Puan Fadlina for coming to today's forum. The format is quite, we're probably going to have 10-15 minutes for me and just fireside chat with Fadlina, with YB Fadlina for the first 10-15 minutes. And then we'll be joined by our panelists, who I'll introduce later. So in a way to have, I mean, it's not often we have the Minister of Education with us. And it's fantastic, it would be fantastic to hear her plans going forward. And I think that's something that we all are looking forward to. But first, I guess the first thing is I think education as a whole, out of every 5 ringgit spent by the Malaysian government on Malaysians, 1 ringgit goes to education. So out of every 5 ringgit, 1 ringgit goes to education. When we include MOE as well as higher education. So it is obviously a very big area of emphasis. YB Rafizi this morning also said about, interesting thing he said, I'm not sure whether I'm sure you're aware, he said the 13th Malaysia plan was not really about more projects. It was actually about education. He said education twice. Education is about TVET and so on. So we are really changing our focus to, this has become a very much, not a fireside chat, but almost a hot seat, because so much focus is on this area. So on that basis, we've had a blueprint that has Malaysian education blueprint that has lasted, that spanned 5 prime ministers and 5 education ministers. And to that extent, I think that's what a blueprint does well, meaning it spans, it goes beyond individuals and it goes beyond individual leaders to span a decade. What has been the success, do you think, of the Malaysian education blueprint?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and salam Malaysia Madani. Thank you, Mr. Malik. BFM, so be friendly, Malik, yeah? On the stage. Alhamdulillah, I think this is a good start, but it's quite critical because we just had a good lunch, yeah. And then this cozy and cold day 1, so please bear with me. Are you here? Are you still with me? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let me start with this proverb that I like so much. I think everybody quite familiar with it. It takes a village to raise a child. So it takes the whole day 1 actually to raise a child. So this year, the blueprint will end 2025, and we are looking for the next blueprint, and it's very important. I will share with you some of the success story that sometimes might be underestimated because the story is not out there, because BFM didn't produce the story, but I think this is a very important part of the story. Number 1 is the enrollment. The enrollment of our primary children, the enrollment of the secondary students in our school has actually achieved the universal standard, 99% for primary, and 95 and 97% for the secondary. So this is a very important achievement to show the world that we really care about our children's education. And I think we really prove that no child is left behind. Secondly is about the addressing the gap in gender equality and the socio-economic that actually has achieved. I think, especially when we look at boys, the gap between boys and girls, this is something that I think we really have to appreciate the success because I'm quite overwhelming with the invitation that Malaysia received from other countries to talk about empowering girls and the girls' education and the success story of our girls, especially in STEM and mathematics. So in terms of Unity Index, Malik, this is very important. The Unity Index in education for 2023 recorded a high score of 7.5. Despite we have these all kinds of schools, national schools and vernacular schools, but the Unity Index in education recorded a high score. And in terms of infrastructure, 64% of school upgrade projects buildings have been completed as of January 2024, and it's an ongoing project, especially when it comes to Sekolah Daif and the facilities for our schools. But Malik, despite this success, several gaps remain, and this part of gaps we have to actually work really hard, and I seek your assistance after this so that we can work together. Number one is the 60-40 for STEM. Yeah? We achieved this year 50.83 for our STEM achievement in our students. So we still got a long way to go, 50.83%. So to achieve 60% for STEM, we still need to do more for STEM. And then the importance of digital divide. We have to address this issue, the digital divide, especially in the urban and rural area. And of course, when we have this, our blueprint, we didn't just stop there, ladies and gentlemen. We need to do more because we need to fill the gap and to actually address the hiccups. So that's why we introduced the reform agenda, the 6th reform agenda, to fill in the gap. So let me share with you some of the, I think, again, the success story that we got from this formulation of the reform agenda. You see, we launched this program Anak Kita with Yayasan Hazana and with the support of Ministry of Finance to address the issue of learning poverty. And it's very important. There's one good story. I was in Nibung Tebau, my constituency, banjir, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, banjir. So I was, walking through the banjir to look after my people. And then this boy came to me. Hi, YB. My name is Ahmad. I'm from the Farm Fresh School, and I can read now. He was so cute, adorable. The message here is, ladies and gentlemen, Farm Fresh is our synergy partner, and we're doing so much project on multi-dimensional poverty. You see, Malik, the poverty that we are addressing now is not the standard poverty, tak cukup duit, tak cukup makan. It's not that. It doesn't stop there. It's a multi-dimensional poverty, meaning there's so much things that we have to ensure this child to have a good education because of the ecosystem that he lives in doesn't support him to proceed with education. So this is one of the best project I think we have, and it's an ongoing project.
If I can jump in here, we talked a little bit about the successes of the education blueprint, but I think the proof is in the pudding a little bit, right? So our PISA scores before we started embarking on the Malaysian education blueprint, I think if we did one in 2009, the average score was 413. 2012, 413. 2012, 413. 2018, we went up to 431, and then COVID happened, right? Yes. And then we're down to 404. So we're not even, I guess, back to where we started. Before the blueprint came in, we're actually behind where we started.
when we embarked on this blueprint. So in that sense, at least amongst international standards, we are behind. And COVID couldn't just be the reason, because other countries also had declined a bit during COVID, but not as much as we did. So then what was wrong either with the, my sense is that, correct me if I'm wrong, my sense is that there's nothing wrong with the blueprint. What was wrong, something went wrong, but something else went wrong.
Yes.
And what was that?
You know, this morning, our Prime Minister had said this, that we have to acknowledge any default or any weaknesses in our system. And of course, like you said, COVID couldn't be the only reason for that. But I will ensure you today that our commitment towards the international benchmarking will continue. That's why we are still participating in PISA. The next round is this year, it's coming this year. Teams, and I add another one, CPAM for the region, for Southeast Asian region. The reason being is because we still need that benchmarking. For whatever reason, we are improving some areas. We might have flopped in some areas, but we are improving in some areas.
But we, according to PISA, we are flopping in, not flopping,
No,
but
no,
we
no.
In 3 areas of reading,
You see,
arithmetic.
it's not about flopping everything, Malik. You have
Your
to,
words, not mine.
Yes, I know. Be friendly, Malik, FEM. So I think we are looking into it. So the case is this: if we pull back or we pull out from these exams, then kita tak ada benchmarking. We don't have any benchmarking internationally. And one thing I think the most significant part of it is to actually looking at how we can improve our education system by looking at the PISA teams and CPAM results. And being such a very committed country to those assessments, we have to prepare our children. Yeah? And one of the reasons, Malik, we found out is that the attitude towards these exams, we actually need to build that confidence and attitude towards these exams. So that's why this year, for this coming PISA, we are doing that, preparing our children. And this time around, the answer is being converted to digital style. Before this, you have to use your pencils and pen and papers. So this time around, so we have to prepare our children with that. Yeah. And one more thing, Malik, is English. I know there's so many arguments about that, but I will take this floor to ensure that our commitment to ensure that Bahasa Melayu is being our national language, Bahasa Melayu is our unity and all that, I'll give you assurance for that. But English language, English language is a competitive language. We still need to improve that. That's why all this assessment and English language and the competency of the teachers are very important. I think we are doing good for now. After all the assessment, we are doing our trajectory. We are doing our process of making sure that these children are really prepared for these exams. Okay, inshallah.
Great. So this brings us to what next, right? And I guess you have been doing the rounds in terms of what you call the Future of Malaysian Education, the successor to the Malaysian Education Blueprint. Future of Malaysia Education 2026 to 2036, the next 10 years, or 11 years. And you've received feedback. Can you shed some light on what the kind of themes are that you, as a result of feedback, that you want to implement for Malaysian education?
I think one thing for sure for the next blueprint is autonomy. We are talking about autonomy.
Earned autonomy or complete
guided autonomy?
Guided autonomy.
Guided autonomy.
Okay.
We have to start with that, guided autonomy. Secondly would be the well-being of the students and the children. I think this is the most important part. We are talking about lots of academic achievement, but we also have to talk about the real thing, I think, especially when it comes to the well-being of the teachers and the students. The issues of bullying, the issues of mental health, and of course, the issue of burden for the teachers. I think another aspect would be the equity part, yeah, among our children, especially in education, to bridging the gap. And of course, when we talk about the future knowledge, the future skills, that would be the AI and also the language factor. All these, Malik, we are looking into the new blueprint, and as I said, we concluded our roadshow last year, and we're still having some of the discussion with especially with the industry to enhance the blueprint. So inshallah, we will see I think a guided autonomy, more addressing significant action towards equity and to address the gap between our students. I think that's all.
Fantastic, good. And you mentioned a little bit about, I think one thing I had a preview of, you had about 6 task forces. Can you just maybe just highlight quickly before we bring the other panelists on board? Yeah. So you had one on, for example, curriculum intervention.
Yes, that one to address the learning poverty and the difficulties in curriculum. And then we have this STEM task force, a very important task force, especially when it comes to the STEM hub and achieving the 60-40. And then the ATIVAT, the preschool. Malik, preschool is very important task force. We're going to open another 130 additional classes this year. You see, on preschools, it's not about adding more, but also how we prepare for the preschools, the teachers, the pedagogy, the curriculum, and how actually we're going to do and move towards to make sure that our children get into school at the early stage. So by 2026, we're going to introduce a new curriculum, and it's going to be 50-50 usage of languages, meaning 50% of Bahasa Melayu and 50% of English. So this is very important to expose our children at early stage, especially in the usage of Bahasa Melayu and English. Then we have this digital task force. I'm glad to share with you that our Delima platform has been very successful. And then our teachers, the using of Delima platform among teachers is really good, 97%. But we still have to work out with our children, yeah? Because it's still around 40%. I think because the usage might be just in schools, but when they go back, they don't have the access, so they didn't actually engage with the Delima platform at home. I think that's all. And another one is for the Bahasa Melayu and Bahasa Inggeris task force.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you for that. And now probably is a great opportune time to bring in the other panelists who all have been involved heavily, I must say, heavily in education. First, let's introduce Shahnaz Al-Sadat, Puan Shahnaz Al-Sadat. She is the founder of LeapEd, a social enterprise that for the last 15 years have been effecting transformation in schools. She is responsible for trust schools under Yayasan Amir, which had started with only 8 schools about 12, 13 years ago to about 90 plus schools now. And I think if you see the transformation of those schools, if you see the kids in those schools, they are, it's been a fantastic example of a pilot project that has succeeded in the Malaysian education system. I remember the question that we had in those days was, how can we translate these 100 schools into 10,000 schools? I think that's one of the issues that we'll talk about today. Second, we have one of the sort of, he's a trustee for Teach for Malaysia, Chen Li Kai. Chen Li Kai, please join us. Chen Li Kai is trustee for Teach for Malaysia, but he is also the global practice leader for education for the whole world for McKinsey before. He's now moved on from McKinsey, and he had supported MOE in the early days. Of coming up with the Malaysian Education Blueprint through the engagement with McKinsey. So if you want to see an author of the Malaysian Education Blueprint that supported the Malaysian Education Ministry, you have Lee Kai over there, right? So in his previous role, he's been asked to consult to other education issues outside of Malaysia. And our third panelist is Zamir Zulkifli. Zamir is a co-founder of Teach for Malaysia and started the whole project rolling during one of the sessions like this. Zamir, his latest role is with the GovTech Edu in Indonesia. He was recruited by Nadiem Makarin, the only foreigner Malaysian to be recruited by the Indonesian government, MOE, the equivalent of MOE, to help with the transformation of Indonesian public schools. I've met Nadiem before, and it's very, very inspirational as to what they're doing in Indonesia. So Zamir, thank you very much. You now, after starting Teach for Malaysia, now you go off and export your talent to Indonesia, and I think you also now your next role is to export your talent to the world as well under Teach for Malaysia, Teach for All umbrella. Yeah. Anyway, so great, fantastic to have you guys. So I think one common thing, at least from a private sector, one thing that we see is that private sector is always proof is in the pudding. And the private sector, we all know that some of us lead large institutions, and we know that change is hard. Creating documents like Malaysian Education Blueprint is hard, but implementing it is much, much harder, right? So I wanted to get some examples of how does one even move. We have 10,000 schools and how many students? 5 million students? 5 million students. We have 10,000 schools, 5 million students. How do we move such an organization forward, right? And I think Malaysian Education Blueprint had some of the steps in there, but at the end of the day, it's about how to do it. How do you get, if you have a demotivated teacher who is burdened with administrative tasks and you want to ask her to do more things, you want to get the headmaster who is really like approaching retirement and really do not want any more headaches, right? And how do you get that person to be motivated to impart knowledge? How do you get the schools which are not, sort of lower performing, how do you get them motivated to go up? How do you get the parents involved to support that rather than sort of, taking their kids out of education? That's all about human relationships, about how to effect change. And let me give 2 examples today as a starting point, and then we'll take it from there. First example, Shanaz, your trust schools. You started with 8 schools, 9 schools, 8 schools, 10 schools. 10 schools in Johor and Sarawak. And what was the mandate? The mandate was to, and these were poor performing schools, right? Yeah, just try it. Just say.
Hello?
Yeah.
No, the idea was to actually find a transformation model. I mean, I must say it's a public-private partnership. So it's MOE with Yayasan Ami and Kazana at that time, and then Lipat as a designer and developer and implementer of the model. So this started in 2011. But the idea actually was to find a model that works at implementation level, because I agree with YB, our access has been good, but quality has been a challenge. The fundamental theory of change here is that you must change the culture actually at the school. Because if you want to be students in the center, student-centric, the culture of the school, everything needs to change. So when we first started, was looking for a model that works, and it cuts across. So the first 10 schools, we had, the low-performing schools, we have big school, we have small school, we have a couple of high-performing. So just to actually come up with a model that can actually transform schools at any time. Yeah.
Yep. And then, what were the resistance that you found along the way as you were trying to do this, as you were trying to transform the schools? It must not have been just plain sailing, right? Yes. What were the barriers? What were the issues? What was the sources of resistance?
Well, yeah, I'd be lying to say that everything.
No,
is easy.
don't paint a rosy picture. No, honestly,
It's definitely not easy.
Yeah.
There are 94 trust schools today, and they are in almost all states. The idea is that they are a demonstration actually, so that the other schools can replicate. The challenge, from an implementation perspective, I think one is you have to be quite resolute and dedicated about to what you actually want. Because if you are focusing on academics, that is all that you're going to be focusing on. So for example, in the blueprint, we are very clear about the student outcomes. There are 6 student outcomes actually. So, knowledge, thinking skills, leadership skills, bilingual proficiency, ethics, and national identity. So if we are clear about that and we are resolute, then we can actually shift implementation-wise. Second is, you have to be authentic about the baseline. Yeah. Because if you don't look at where your feet really is and you try to jump, you fall flat on your face. So the baseline, I must say, this is the challenge we currently have, is really the authenticity of how they rate themselves. And I'm not saying that they're liars, they're not, it's not integrity. But it's about what standards are you looking at? If I rate 4, actually what kind of evidences, the practices that you need to see. And when we show to them what it needs to be, quite a lot of time, all these schools will re-rate themselves by 50-60% lower.
Yeah. We see in the private sector, we see that all the time, where employees rate themselves a bit higher, a bit lower, that kind of thing, right? So,
Yes. So you need to know what your baseline is. And then you have to then go, okay, how do I improve from that baseline to where you want to get to? And it has to be by substance, not by form. Like ticking the box. So these 3 things from an implementation perspective that really work with trust schools, because we really work with the school leaders and the teachers to really look at these elements. 2 standards we focus on: leadership and management of the school and the teachers. These 2 big levers that actually move the needle, basically. Okay. So at systemic level, you're talking about, that's 94 schools. How do we shift this to the 10,000 schools? Is again, so how, I must say that we have surrendered back, if I want to say it that way, because it's a public-private partnership. We never divorce the schools from the system. So they are back under the MOE care right now. And I think MOE under TS25 is trying to replicate this. But it's a recipe that needs to be...
So I think it's fair to say that there's been a measure of success with the 94 schools. Now the question is, how do you spread that 94 schools to 10,000 schools, if that is the direction? And the learnings about sort of the authenticity of data, right? Meaning the data that comes in. First, we need to collect it, but secondly, we also need to be not like defensive about it. Not we just data is data, right? It's the truth, and let's not game the system. I worried a bit when we saying we're training for PISA. I'm a bit worried, I think we shouldn't game the system. We should do it as the way it is, right? So, okay. Now, I want to shift to you, Zamir. Zamir, 94 schools. How many schools were you dealing with?
Well, in Indonesia, we had 17,000 islands, 50 million students, and 300,000 schools.
Okay. And so we're talking about 3x in terms of schools, and we're talking about 3x.
30x.
30. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, 30x.
Yeah, because of the geographic dispersion.
Yeah. Wow, you're right. 30x in terms of schools and 15 million. Okay, students. All right. So, okay. Now, if you think our job is hard, let's put. How do you even begin?
Right. So we approached it with the 3 levels of the curriculum, right? Taught curriculum, assessed curriculum, and written curriculum. With the assessed curriculum, we did something very drastic. We got rid of national assessments, something we did in Malaysia, and we also moved to school-based assessments.
Very similar to Malaysia. Okay, let's say that's what we did as well.
What we did as well. But what we did differently is that we added a sampling-based approach to all schools. So every year, we'll take a portion that's statistically representative, and the kids will have to sit for a test. And this, so that the test was no longer high stakes for the individual student, but became high stakes for the school. So the results were given back, school X, this is your literacy, numeracy levels.
Okay.
And
that's what we don't have in Malaysia right now.
Yeah.
We got rid of the exam system, but we don't have this middle ground of being able to assess schools now. At least that's the impression that I get. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you have this ability to sample. Almost it's like an internal Malaysian PISA, right? That's what Indonesia did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the funny part also, the guy that designed it was an Indonesian that had worked with OECD and PISA.
Okay.
That was brought in as one of the director generals into the ministry also.
That also is an interesting thing, because Malaysia, we're not allowed to bring in any outside folks into the Ministry of Education.
Yeah.
As thing. Whereas in Indonesia, you are a Malaysian is in the Ministry of Education. How did that happen?
But my role is not formal. I don't have to report to Parliament or anything like that. So I'm just supporting as an advisor.
Okay.
But for the level under the minister, that first level, it's called an open position in the civil service, where anyone can apply, but of course they have to be Indonesian for that.
Okay.
So we got someone in that had that PISA thinking, that then brought that approach to us.
So he was a Johan Marikan lah. We have only one example of that in Malaysia. His name is John Marikan. He works for Finance Ministry. We have only one person from outside that was inducted into the civil service, and that's Johan Marikan. Johan, are you here? No, you're not. Okay. He was here this morning. Okay. Fadlina you can't ingest anyone, right? From outside. There's no way. Would you like to if you had the opportunity?
I really believe in our talents as well, but we seek advice from time to time from others.
Okay.
And we have established our Majlis Penasihat Pendidikan Kebangsaan, which is very good. And we actually develop this kind of talent, from Malaysia. So I think we are doing good, but from time to time, yes, we get advice from UNICEF, from UNESCO, so it's okay.
But okay, right. So, but advisory level. Okay. So go on. I interrupted you, Zamir. Sorry.
So from on top of the assessment, so there was then a report card based on the literacy numeracy, and then there was also student survey and sentiment almost, like on bullying, quality of teaching, etc. So even that was given to the school as like 6 priority indicators, and that report was published at the school level, kabupaten or district level, and then province or state level equivalent.
Okay.
So all that data was presented, and then budgets could be reallocated based on the new assessment criteria. And previously it was all like more process, paper-based. That was a lot of work. So all of that was removed so that there was no longer compliance requirements, and it was only on outcomes that we wanted to see.
Okay.
So that's one so far, yeah.
Okay. Wow, what was the first thing, right?
Yeah.
So again, the theme of authentic data, right? That's what you needed data, and the data came from the schools, from the sampling, and so on.
And published.
And published.
Yeah.
So it's not secret, it's external, so that people can comment, look at it, and, self-assess, right? Just, like things like that, right? So, and then, if now I have to ask you, given the time, I have to ask you to summarize a little, there's a big change management program, if you can, step 2, step 3.
Yeah, so then we also had the written curriculum, which a lot of the changes are very similar to what's seen globally, so I won't expand on that. But on the taught curriculum, we did 3 important things. First thing was school principals. We revamped the school principal selection criteria, made it possible with anyone with minimum of 5 years of experience to be principals. So they didn't have to wait for a 20-year career. By then, it's like there was a relevance gap that was missing.
Yeah. Shanaz, how long can you be a principal in 5 years in Malaysia? Can you be a principal in a Malaysian school in 5 years? Does anyone know that? Any MOE individuals? Can you be a principal in school in 5 years in Malaysia? Time-based.
I don't think
it's
so.
Time-based, right? Seniority-based, not ability-based.
Yeah.
Right?
So principals became the change agents on the ground. And I think Malaysia had something similar like the SISC and then the SIP Plus. But they were always like sort of external roles in the school rather than someone in the school that had that accountability directly.
Yeah.
So I can understand why Malaysia did it in the blueprint previously as a step to get there, but we just skipped that and we just changed the principal selection process. And then we also changed the process for new teachers to come in. So we changed it at the top and we changed it at the bottom, at the beginning. And then middle group of teachers that were there, one constraint that we had was budget and training that we could do. Even if we introduce any new policy, it would almost take like 15 years if we had to do the teach the trainer and then the teachers learn from that perspective. So we created an online learning platform that content was developed by the ministry, so there was no distortion or loss of quality. And then the principals that we hired could then take that and start running professional learning communities, so that even the principal's job description was changed to be an instructional leader, which was called out heavily in our blueprint also, but we just made sure that became a practice in schools.
Okay, great. Thanks, Zamir. So I guess I think, Zamir, you're summarizing what was probably, sort of many, many hours of work into just this short 5-minute on change management. Not easy. We all know that because we've tried to change our companies before. I'm trying to change a company of 70 people. Not easy. Trying to change a group of, we're talking about, 300,000 schools. That's crazy. Okay, now I'd just like to turn to Lee Kai, simply because I guess Lee Kai has a bit more of a perspective across jurisdictions and so on, about how organizationally, right? I mean, you heard about Zamir doing, is what Indonesia is doing, what we're doing, how does an organization, how do you create readiness of organizations? As he says, it's all about culture for Shanaz. It's about processes and authentic data. How do you make sure that organizations are ready, able, and willing for change, right? What are the elements that especially in the Malaysian context, given that you have a unique view of the Malaysian context?
Thanks, Malik. I think as YB has pointed out, an education organization, education system is a hugely complex item. And when you look at, I guess, the world's most improved school systems, or the best school systems in the world, and how they've affected organizational change, they tend to look at the education system as a system. And what I mean by that is, every school system, every education system, for every school, goes through a certain performance journey. So school systems or schools go from being poor performing to fair performing to good performing to great and to excellence. And the key for organization change in education system is understanding and implementing that there is no one-size-fits-all model. And by that, what I mean is a school system or a school who is in a poor to fair performance journey, you need a different set of interventions from a school system or an administrative organization, which is moving from good to great or great to excellent. At the poor to fair stage, organizational change, system change requires much more support, not less. It requires, for example, prescriptive support, lesson planning, getting the basic infrastructure right, less initiatives, getting schools to focus. At the good to great phase of the performance journey, school systems, schools tend to focus on professionalizing the teaching profession. Like Zamir was talking about, making school principals instructional leaders, getting career pathways, raising the bar for the teaching profession, different career pathway specializations. At the great to excellent phase of the performance journey, what school systems tend to focus on as an organization is about collaborative practices. It's about decentralizing decision rights. It's about finding innovation at specific schools, specific classes, identifying them, replicating them, and disseminating practices across. So one of the biggest challenges for organization change or system change in a school system is you tend to learn from the wrong practices. There is no such thing as best practices in education reform. It's about relevant practice. Learn from school systems which are undergoing the same journey. I think if I may, YP also talked about this concept of guided autonomy, which I like to come to because it's an important concept. And so when you look at what the best performing and the most improved school systems do, the same concept of earned autonomy or guided autonomy is critical. This is not about saying I'm going to blanket give schools autonomy. If you look at countries like New Zealand, 25 years ago, flipped on a switch, every school had autonomy. 10, 15 years later, 1/3 of schools were failing. And the reason for that is this concept about a differentiated approach. A school or a school system which is in a poor to fair performance journey cannot quite cope with autonomy. They need more support, not less. They need less initiatives. They need more focus. Focus on basic infrastructure, literacy, numeracy, prescriptive support. Only when schools or school systems get better, then we prescribe adequacy and unleash greatness. That's when earned autonomy comes in.
Yeah, I see that. I guess, I mean, the first principle is to classify those schools into fair, poor, fair, good, great. I think, again, the question of authentic data comes in. That means the ability to no one's gaming the system. You're really trying to get the data on the schools. I think we had that before. At one point we listed, I remember this Idris Jala days, right? He listed from certain things, and then and interestingly, some private schools, including private schools, and some public schools were in the top band as well, right? And then you work, as you say, there are different horses for different courses, right? Basically, for the poor to fair, you have a lesson plans, prescriptive. this is what you do, McDonald's of education. That means you follow this SOP, pop, pop, pop. But with the excellent ones, hey, you want to do your debate, decathlon, whatever it is, they kind of go ahead, right? That's your call. The headmasters has a call. So I think that's a fantastic approach, but it's predicated on the fact that we have authentic data. That's the most important thing, and public data as well. Okay. Let's talk about then, so we did, actually you covered a couple of points which can you just, maybe, one thing when I looked at the Malaysian education blueprint, when I saw the chart of, I remember there was a pyramid. It wasn't a pyramid. It was almost like of administrators and state level administrators, federal level administrators, and then you get the teacher administration. It wasn't a pyramid. It was like almost like a rectangle. There's one teacher for every, for every administrator. It felt like it. I don't know whether that was wrong. You're looking at me quite, but did you have this?
It was like a kerengga looking because the top. And then schools.
Oh, macam hourglass.
Yes.
Okay. Likai, did you have any, this is about sort of this thing about PPDs and JPNs and staff involved in that. Is there ways to kind of like get that more balanced?
I think if I understand, Malay, what you're describing was, I guess, the organizational structure,
yeah,
the head count of the ministry engine. Right? I think in Malaysia, and admittedly in many countries as well, the organization of the education ministry looks like an hourglass, fairly top-heavy, a lot of teachers at the school level, and a very thin middle layer. So in Malaysia, we've got the federal ministry, we've got the state-level JPNs, and we've got the district-level PPDs, district officers. And what the research is showing in terms of system change, successful education system change, is that this middle layer is actually absolutely vital. And in middle layer, Malaysia, of course, we mean the JPN and the PPDs, the state and the district leaders. So in some ways, if you think about who are the most pivotal, who are the most consequential, influential leaders in the education system, it is the 150 or so district education leaders and state education leaders in the middle, and what role they play. And again, for successful school system reform, these pivotal leaders, the 150, play an absolutely vital role in terms of providing both support and accountability to schools. So typically for middle layers, sometimes they act like a postman. Federal ministry says certain things, I will pass on the message, the arahans, the circulars, the guidelines. Successful systems, they emphasize leadership development, they emphasize empowering the middle layer. So they provide more support to schools, curriculum support, pedagogical support. They also provide accountability, performance management, data transparency. They also act as a buffer between the ministry and the schools. They prevent the schools from being overwhelmed by the number of initiatives coming down. They help the schools in terms of learning from each other. They help the schools prioritize what they should do and what they shouldn't do. They help identify which schools are improving, which are not, and therefore which cluster interventions work. So exactly to Malik's point, this is often it's not just the what of education reform, what we should do, the initiatives, but how we implement, how we execute, how we deliver, and how do we win the hearts and minds and get that change down. And that middle layer plays an absolutely vital role.
All right. So now I'd like to take that from that and kind of like say, I think there's also a point of view that beyond that 150, headmasters and headmistresses are also really crucial. School leadership is also crucial to the education system. But at the federal level, there's one issue that I've actually encountered, and I don't know how you guys do it at MOE, right? But if you have a director general that's appointed, and he or she is still 2 years till retirement, and appointed at that level, at that point, that means you got 2 years, and then the continuity breaks, right? I think we've had this for like 3-4 DGs already, where it's just 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, and our blueprint is 15 years, 10 years, right? Is there a way around this? Are you forced to follow this seniority, time-based system? I don't know. I'd rather put in, I don't know. I'm not saying, I'm just saying that, you know, is there a MOE, is there some realization that this is not actually conducive to success, to, you know, sort of continuity of programs?
we are fully aware of that situation. Yes, we...
Renew, Qatar, renew, everyone's worried. 6 months later, you're still acting
I know,
DG because you don't know whether you renew or not.
But of course we have the same concern, because the continuity issues and these what we call these strategic approach that we have to implement during that critical years. Of course, it's within our concern as well. But again, we are subject to this our policy in terms of service.
We have the
but
state secretary.
we are making sure that the next appointment should be within that critical years of implementing the good policy. So we are aware, we are concerned about it.
Yeah. All right. And when you hear about things like what Likai was saying about sort of the staffing and where the balance should be, what's your sense of that? Do you agree? Do you feel that no, it's actually Likai, you're not aware of a few things, and in terms of, is it that hourglass issue that there's no concentration at the...
I think it's so obvious. What Lee Kang mentioned is actually our greatest challenge when it comes to implementation. That would be the issue, Lee Kang, right? We have sort of like from top to bottom implementation. So yes, that would be our main challenges. But I believe that there are some potential and improvement that we can derive from that. And we are doing it now. And this year, my focus will be on every single PPD. So we are going to make sure that the effort, the delivery, and of course, the quality, especially in terms of our PPD and JPN, are doing or on track, because we have so many things that going on this year. So it's very critical for this year. So I'm looking at it. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
May I interject on that?
Yes, sure, Shahnaz.
So apart from doing trust schools, we actually did a district transformation program as a partnership at one state. I must say my data is showing we have problems at all levels, let's be clear. The question now is that the exigency of problem for implementation purpose, we need to decide where is the intervention that we need to focus on. And because of the students' gap, I guess, or the expectation of the industry community against what has been coming out from our system is getting further and further away. I honestly think at the end of the day, instead of the district focus, I would still concentrate more on teachers at the moment. I mean, because if you look at the school leaders, I mean, unfortunately, as you said, 5 years you don't get to school being principal here in Malaysia. And if you talk about DG, 2 years, I can tell you same thing at principal. Oh. Okay, maybe 5, 6 years ago. I think now MOE has been refreshing that a bit. But on the other hand, what Trust School has shown is that working on the middle leaders, teachers, in the school actually is much more sustainable. It actually delivers outcome faster and it's actually more sustainable. So rather than I invest the ringgit at district, I must say, I mean, this is based on the data. I think I'd rather invest on the teachers in the school.
All right, a slightly different point. Likai?
Yeah, I think Shahnaz raises probably the single most important point around system reform, education system reform, the teachers. Right? Because I think what all the research shows and consistently shows is the quality of an education system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. The single biggest determinant of... Okay,
let's repeat that. What? Can you say that again, Likai? For some of them, you might, the single?
Yeah, so the quality of education system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. And the single biggest determinant of student outcomes is the quality of the teaching, and by definition, the quality of the teachers and the instruction that we get in the classroom. And so, exactly to Shahnaz's point, if you look at the most improved systems, or the best systems, it's a relentless focus on teachers. It's about making the entry bar very high for teachers. It's about providing much more professional development. It's about investing in teachers. It's not just about pre-service, it's about in-service program. It's about career pathways for teachers. It's about providing different specializations, master teachers, specialist teachers. It's also about eventually professionalizing teaching, for raising the profile of the teaching profession, making it a real profession, setting up professional bodies, certification for teachers at some point. And
which is different from unions also.
Yes, and if we look back in I guess in the history of Malaysian education, 25 years ago, we had a student-teacher ratio of 23 to 1. 23 students to 1 teacher. That's 25 years ago. 10, 12 years later, we increased the number of teachers, and we had a student-teacher ratio of 14 to 1. So about 230,000 teachers, we increased about 400,000 teachers. Our learning outcomes didn't necessarily increase during that period. And again, what the research is showing is, it's not necessarily the class size that matters. It's not necessarily the number of teachers that matters. In fact, it's not even necessarily how much money we put in or the investment we put in. It is fundamentally the quality of the teachers and the quality of teaching, which is, I think, what Shanaz pointed out. And I guess what we could also see is, if you look at, I guess, learning outcomes, this point about what do we spend on. I think Malik was saying I think Malaysia probably spends 12, 14,000 ringgit per student, so about 3,000, 4,000.
13,000 ringgit per second, primary school student. Primary secondary school student, yeah.
Right? And you have systems who spend perhaps half of what we do, like let's say for Vietnam. And the average 15-year-old Vietnamese student is 1 school year ahead of Malaysia. So again, it's not necessarily what we spend on. Sorry, it's not necessarily how much we spend, but what we spend on. Teachers, quality of the teaching, and lifting the profession.
Yeah, great.
And as much as I definitely supported the fact that our blueprint, we implemented, I think maybe almost half of what we said we're going to implement. Oops. But teachers' initiative in the blueprint, I think, was the lowest. This is based on the recent LSE alums study. We look at data. I mean, this one, we are not looking at people. We're really looking line by line by the initiatives and saying which one has been completed. So the teachers' initiative is among the lowest. I think more than 50% was not everybody. So I'm just saying that if you want to think through for the next blueprint, I think we really need to ramp this up.
And I'd like to interject here by saying there are organizations such as yourselves and Teach for Malaysia, right? That actually, when we talk about focus on teachers, Teach for Malaysia, I've been to a school in Kedah as part of the
TFM week.
TFM week, right? And I was amazed at the teacher the TFM teacher, the class that she had, you know, and you know, she was Chinese and the kids were Malay, right? And they loved her and they were dedicated and things. And I guess what I'm trying to say is this, if anything I can say is that, Fadlina, you have a lot of support in the private sector, in NGOs that want to help. I think some of the help that we've given before, like TFM, has been cut back to a certain extent, in the sense that teachers provided by TFM now do not have kind of like the autonomy, the decision-making of a normal teacher. They are like teaching assistants. So, I mean, the resources are here. There are people who are willing to do that, who do their thing. So, take advantage of us. Really, do take advantage of us. We're all here to help. You know, I'll give you an example. I mean, the LSE alumni actually prepared. The LSE alumni actually prepared a document. I'm not an LSE alumni actually, but they say Alumni Society of Malaysia, improving the quality of education in Malaysia, and you know they have a table of contents. They did this document just for this when they knew that I was moderating the session, and charts on how to get teachers excited about the teaching profession again. And there's stuff here from G25. Everyone, I remember the moment they heard that I was going to moderate the session, I'm getting all kinds of like, Malik, please talk to her about this. Please talk to her about that. So I can assure you, right? I can assure you, you have all the goodwill of us. We want our kids to do well. You will solve DSAI's social cost of living factor. You know, middle-class parents here spend 20K at least a year on private education because we don't you know, we feel that the public education system has let us down. So you take 20,000, 50,000, 80,000 out of the system, they have cash in their hands and they will be able to spend on the economy, right? So with that, I would like to pass this to you. Thank you very much. And thank you to all our panelists for a fantastic session. Thank you very much. Sorry I couldn't get to your questions. The time was up, but I had to do this, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, YB Puan Fadlina, Puan Shasnaz, Encik Chen, Encik Zamir, and Encik Malik for sharing such valuable insight. We kindly ask you to remain on stage for